It was indeed a cheerful one for the National Democratic Party or Congress yesterday, as we had a whole lot of defections coming from the ADC. Now, with the era of alignment and realignment, especially as it concerns the political landscape, many are saying there would be a whole lot of defection in the coming weeks ahead. And honestly, how would that affect the 2027 general election is a question on the mind of many pundits. But anyway, as much as you ponder on that, I want to quickly welcome you to another awesome time on television. Indeed, it's Viewpoint, and as always, my name remains Michael Gobardia. Indeed, it's another awesome time, like I said, for us to be together right here. And talking about right here, you do know I'll never be alone. Well, anyway, a man walking alone is always hard. So indeed, I have a colleague right here. I'm talking of no other person but Patience Monday. Patience Monday is a beautiful Wednesday, and indeed another time for us to be with them, for them to really enjoy being with us always.
Mr. Michael, good morning.
Morning.
I know it's not good to work alone.
It's never good to work alone.
Of course, it's still Viewpoint on Atlantic TV, and you know Viewpoint will begin with the dailies, and then the dialogue takes center stage. And the news comes around. Do well to connect with us on all our social media platforms of Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram at Atlantic Media and TV. We go on this quick break. When we return, the dailies will be next.
Okay.
Atlantic TV.
Well, yes, the dailies is what we're having right here, right now. And for review, we have 7 papers. We have the Nigerian Tribune, the Daily Trust, the Nation, as much as we're looking at the Daily Sun, the Vanguard, Guardian, and the Punch. The Punch will start off for us today. And on the Punch this morning, the leading story reads, Obi Kwankwaso exit rocks ADC, 18 lawmakers join NDC. We're talking about mass exodus. The riders to follow, Akpabio mocks opposition party amid exodus of Kwankwasoya supporters and 23 ADC aspirants defect in Anambra. I'll tell you, stick around, because we'll be looking at this critically as we talk about realignment and alignment of the political landscape in Nigeria. But I'll tell you to read that story up on page 2. Let's see if we take some other lady stories. Still on the front page of the Punch this morning. INEC reopens nationwide voter registration on Monday. Is a major one on page 10. Coup trial. Villa Walker claims he was misled. Don't miss that story. Read it up on page 8. Xenophobia raw. Shomala 6 ban on MTN and DSTV. It looks as if the fight has just begun on page 7. 11th National Assembly. Senate blocks ex-governor Uzodimma from principal offices. And you can really read that story up on page 10. Let's see if we take some other leading stories still on the front page of the Punch this morning. 62 Nigerians detained in Uganda. Battle illness infant hospitalized. It's a sad narrative on page 4 and 5. Tinubu sent Tegbe Anil Kaloye for Senate screening on the major one on page 7. Opposition rift widens over sole presidential ticket. Is a man you need to read up on page 2. Lovers rage. Lagos park worker baited with acid. Wow. Wow, there's always a thin line between love and hate. But page 4 and 5 has that story. Custom nab 71-year-old man with 2.35 billion cocaine haul And you'll be asking Patience Monday, is he planning to secure his future? Well, anyway, 71. But anyway, page 20 has that story. But the picture of the day is that transpired in Ekiti State, and you do know all the campaigns, and it is during the BAO re-election campaign rally in Ido Ekiti. And well, you can see the governor there, Oyebaji, in all smiles. But anyway, that's much we can take from the Punch.
Let's check out stories making rounds on the Guardian newspaper this morning. And on the Guardian, the leading story reads, "Back to school, cost pressure mounts as families struggle to keep children in school." Well, the riders to that. Nigeria's education under siege, the impact of global and local economic crisis. We can get up that story on page 6. Still on the front page, INEC resumes final phase of voter registration on May, where you can find more details on page 4. National Assembly decries xenophobic attack in South Africa, hedges diplomatic action, where you can get more of that on page 4. Pricing store offtake of 40.2 million barrels of crude by local refineries. You can find all of that on page 4, still on the front page of the Guardian newspaper. Let's see if we can take more of the leading story. Opposition fracture widen as 20 lawmakers defect in National Assembly. That very story is on page 6. Court awards 100 million naira damages against Serap in DSS defamation suits. You can still get those very details on page 5. Still on the front page, Inspector General of Police creates new crime response unit, flays rule violation. Final of that on page 28. Tinubu withhold assent to NIMC Act over legal drafting errors. You can get more details on page 5. Zenith Bank's shareholders get 410.69 billion naira dividend. Bello succeed Ovia as chairman. Well, you can get that story up on page 4 of the Guardian newspaper. Well, the picture of the day is that of the picture of the day is the Executive Director, Zenith Bank PLC, Kennedy Shukwudi, and other prominent staff of Zenith Bank during the 35 yearly general meeting held in Lagos yesterday. That's what you can take on the Guardian this morning.
Let's run over to the Nation, see what the Nation has as it concerns the Nation. And on the Nation this morning, the leading story reads, Nigeria record 11.2% GDP growth in dollar terms last year, has grown to be sustained post-2027, Tinubu assures investors. And I'll tell you to invest that story or read more of that story up on page 6. Let's see if we take some other leading stories. Still on the front page of the Nation this morning. Zenith Bank to share 410.69 billion naira dividends. I know shareholders will be smiling to the bank as Bello takes over as chair from OVA. And you can get that story up on page 25. Banks show stronger outlook after major loan cleanup. It's a major one on page 7. It looks as if a whole lot of business seems to be on the Nation this morning. I got 9 million from cool suspect. Colonel Majid says weakness on page 7. Nest Oil, public notice warning. Still a continuation on page 2 and 3. But let's see if we take other leading stories. It's still on the front page right there. Anyway, more blows for ADC. 2 senators, 16 reps desert party. And I'll tell you not to desert that story, but read it up on page 6. Let's see Uzodinma. Okay, well, it looks as if Uzodinma Okorocha Uzunasu in battle royal for APC Imo West Senatorial's ticket. And you can get that story up on page 4 and 5, where it's more like the rumble in the jungle. And senators not in 10th assembly can't preside in 11th assembly. It's a new Senate rule on page 7. Court fines Serap 101 million naira. And that suit is against the DSS. And you can get that story up on page 6. But the picture of the day is Oni Ekiti to make history with Oyebaji re-election. And you know in Ekiti State, it's always so difficult to re-elect the incumbents. They have to go come. But it looks as if Oyebaji wants to change the narrative. But I'll tell you not to change that story, but read it up on page 8. And that's the picture, 28 rather, and that's the picture of the day, and much you can take from the Nation.
Moving on, let's check out stories making it to the headline of the Nigerian Tribune this morning. And on the Nigerian Tribune, the leading story reads, 17 reps, 1 senator follow Kwankwaso Obi to NDC. Well, that very story, and the writers to that, rather, ADC reviews timetable, fixes presidential primary for May 23. Peg's nomination form at 90 million naira. Special convention holds May 26. You can get all of that on page 4 and 16 of the Nigerian Tribune. Still on the front page, Jim Ovio retires as Zenith Bank chairman after 12 years. Wow. Mustafa Bello takes over. Is a major one on page 5. Court orders interim forfeiture of 9 Abuja properties linked to ex-Governor Silva. You can get up that story on page 27. Senate amend rules limit leadership position to ranking principal officers. And the writers to that very story, governor's orders eyeing seats shut down. You can get up that story on page 27, still on the Nigerian Tribune. Still on the front page, alleged coup. I was misled, presidential villa staff says in video statement. Well, you can find more of that on page 3. Custom intercept 2.35 billion naira cocaine, Ghana loud. Others, and the writers to that very story, recovers 5.5 billion naira in Ogun, Ondo, Lagos, and Oyo states. Wow, it's a major one on page 27. Court acquits former head of service, Oyo Ita, orders of 570 million naira fraud charges. That very story on page 4. UN, EU, AU, ICJ world leaders petition over xenophobic attack in South Africa. Akpabio to lead fact-finding visits to South Africa Parliament. You can get more details on page 30. Digital register, opposition parties in last-minute rush to beat INEC deadline. And the riders, senator reps, gubernatorial aspirants move across parties ahead Sunday deadline. Well, it's interesting to get more of that on page 2. Let's see what the head has for us this morning. Talking health. Studies reveal early cannabis use linked to slower cognitive development in teens. Well, you can get more of that on page 30. And the picture of the day is that of the BAO re-election campaign rally in Ekiti State on Tuesday. Well, that is much we can take on the Nigeria Tribune this morning.
Let's see how sunny it is. Daily Sun next right here on paper review. And on the Daily Sun, and just like you have it on Dialogue, after Michael Peter Obi's exit, mass exodus hits ADC. 17 reps dump coalition party for NDC. Pabio pronounces opposition party dead.
Wow.
But anyway, don't kill that story, but read it up on page 6. I'm getting confused. NDC, ADC. Okay, remove A, put N. Well, anyways, just leave that. But let's see if we take some other leading stories still on the front page of the Daily Sun. National Assembly blows hot over xenophobic attacks on Nigerians to meet South African Parliament is a screamer on page 6. Alleged coup. Video evidence reveals how plotters were paid in millions. And you can mill all that story up on page 6 also. Let's see if we take some other leading story. PDP 2027 hope dims for PDP as fresh crisis may stop party from feeding presidential candidate is a screamer on page 8. Police record largest arms seizure in South Kokumo. IGP orders police weapons audit across command is a major one on page 4. Zenith Bank founder Jim Ovia retires. Bello takes over board chair on page 25. Tinubu woes investors in Paris. Vows of fiscal discipline policy stability is a man, or rather a major one on page 8. I'll just rather take the picture of the day, a different one. Senate President Goswell Kwabio, Deputy Senate President Shiru, and others, especially as it concerns the Committee on Southeast Development Commission. We're talking about Ojiwu Okalo and others in Abuja. That transpired yesterday. Well, that's the much we can take from the Daily Sun.
I trust you stay with us on dailies as we check out stories making rounds on Daily Trust this morning. And on the Daily Trust, the leading story reads, bandits killed 24 in Castina State as military neutralizes 45 gunmen. Well, it's a sad one on page 3 and 4 of the Daily Trust. Still on the front page, alleged coup, I was deceived by co-suspect. Wow. It's a screamer on page 32, police CF headquarters. Well, it's interesting to know more of that on page 5. Senate amend rules on election of presiding officers. Get more of that on page 34. Let's see if we can take more of the leading stories still on the front page of the Daily Trust. Rainstorm kills boy, destroy houses in Kaduna. It's a very disturbing narrative on page 35. Bello takes over as Ovio bows out of Zenith Bank after 12 years of service. Well, it's a major one on page 25. I was detained, tortured for rejecting policeman's advances. You can get that on page 21. ADC loses Senate, Rep seat, reviews cost of forms. Well, you can get more of that on page 6. Then the picture of the day is that of the 35th annual general meeting of Zenith Bank PLC held in Lagos State yesterday. Well, that is much you can take on the Daily Trust this morning.
The Vanguard will be next as much as we look at the last paper for review today. And on the Vanguard this morning, 2027, citing crisis, 19 National Assembly members defect to the NDC. Riders to follow. ADC, NMPP loses 3 seats in Senate as a Baribe Hanga defect. 18 reps defect from ADC, 17 to NDC, 1 joins APC. Senate configuration, APC 88, ADC 8, PDP 4, NDC 3, ABGA 1, and Accord 1. Vacant seat 4. Reps, APC 260, PDP 38, Labour 21, NDC 17, NMPP 14, ABGA 5, others 4. ADA, distance from Agro fight against NDC registration. One think ADC is dead. Or rather, I think ADC is dead. Who? Not me. Gospel like Pabio. You can read all of that story up on page 5. Let's see if we take some other leading stories here on the front page of the Vanguard this morning. Federal government sanctions 147 officers, destroy 1,167 phones in crackdown on prison contraband. And you can get more of that on page 9. Banking colossus Jim Ovia retires as Zenith Bank chair. And I can say it's sharing news for only him as he takes the bow in a loud ovation. Get that story up on page 19. 2027, Wike settles for George Kelly Chinda as APC PDP Goba aspirant, according to source on page 21. Electrical plot, over 10 million naira paid to Miu was for prayers, Islamic cleric insists. Yay. Page 9 has more of that story. Let's see if we take some other leading story. The Vanguard was still with xenophobia, Senate Rep Ezekwesili orders man pressure on South African government, diplomatic pressure as African nations threatening retaliation action. And you can get more of that action on page 8. Next, oil, we're not responsible for banks' failure to pay dividends, and you can understand that on page 20. You always know I love the Mr. and Mrs. column. Let's kind of take things a bit down. As always, I go with the women first. You are too jealous. The gentleman only whispered some complimentary remarks into my ears. Mr. has to follow, and you think I will fold my arms until he moves from your ears to other parts of your body? Okay, well, anyway, let's just leave that. Let's see the picture of the day. The picture of the day is the First Lady as she receives the women chapter of the National Women Mega Empowerment and rally held yesterday in Abuja. And that's the much we can take from the Vanguard and all the papers put together. 7 it was. And indeed, I'll tell you, it's all been interesting with different headlines, all stated in the different papers today. But you do understand that I will always emphasize that if you find any truly enjoyable, do us a favor, read it up later. No, not now, especially when it comes to Viewpoint and Dialogue and every that concerns Viewpoint. Stick around because Dialogue will take center stage next, right here on Viewpoint on Atlantic TV.
Atlantic TV.